Welcome to another episode of Back and Forth with Becker and Orr. Kevin and I are ready to go. Lots to tackle today. You can see all the topics at the bottom of the screen there, including our leadoff topic, how I almost bought the Constitution. Quite the story. You want to stick around for that.
Yes, today we're broadcasting live from the home studios in Winnipeg, as it were, at the office building downtown 201 Portage. We are going to be talking about a variety of different topics today. Constitution, Bombers, GE, Red Notice, everything's on the bottom. You'll get the hint from there. Again, if you want to find out more about this, Back and Forth, Financial 15, please go to our website at beckerorr.com or like us on Facebook, or especially visit our YouTube site, subscribe, sign up. You get all this good content and more. But first, we're going to start with Clinton's favorite thing. How I almost bought the Constitution. You were in on this, weren't you? You wanted to get into the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah, a little background there. We need to explain a little bit of the background. That's quite the lead-off topic. But the idea was, first off, U.S. Constitution, the original prints, I think it was like 13, 14 original prints, the majority of which are owned by museums, institutions. They're on display. There are two that are still in private hands. One of those two went up for auction last week. And then you had a group of cryptocurrency investors that tried to raise money to bid on the Constitution. That's the background here. The more interesting part, Kevin, is how they went about doing it. So we talk about cryptocurrency. People often think about the currency. I'm going to use something to buy my day-to-day coffee. I think that misses the point. The Constitution DAO, the DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization, it's built on the Ethereum blockchain. A group of folks were able to organize, use different technology to build this DAO on the Ethereum blockchain, use that blockchain technology. They raised over $40 million in a span of a week. Just give you an idea of how big this thing got. And then they went to the auction and tried to bid on the Constitution. I was part of the process. I did put some money in this DAO. They ended up losing. Someone paid $41 million for the print of the Constitution. But I think that's quite the story there. The fact that they were able to organize, get that done, all on the blockchain technology in a matter of a week, over $40 million to try to bid on the Constitution. Quite the story, Kevin.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, basically what you've just mentioned there, I mean, if being a millennial that you are, or a Gen Z, everybody understands what's going on here. You use the term DAO, I'm gone. That's it. And I'm thinking that's where we have to start with it. If you'd have gotten into any more of this, it would have been, okay, I know you bid on the Constitution. It was a cryptocurrency thing, which, as you mentioned, is a misnomer. But again, as you can say, it is now well organized enough that they could raise $40 million to actually make a bid on this print. That has got to say something about the entire movement of this system going forward and how much more it is being incorporated into everyday life as opposed to, say, even 6 months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if there's two takeaways here, one, if you think cryptocurrency, you're only thinking about currency, you might be missing some of the points, some of the potential value there. And then number two is it's still not ready for mainstream. I skipped the steps here. There's like 7 steps to get Canadian dollars into Ethereum and they get the Ethereum into this DAO. It's like a 7-step process. So we're definitely not ready for the mainstream just yet. But certainly gives you an idea of the potential with that kind of technology. But let's move on to one of your favorite topics here, Kevin. Let's get right into the sports arena. Winnipeg Blue Bombers, you can see the headline there at the bottom. Will anyone be able to stop the Winnipeg Blue Bombers from winning the 2021 Grey Cup?
Yes, let's put it in perspective. They basically have not had anything to play for since October 23rd. They clinched the division at 11-1. And as we've seen the last 2 games, they've basically been playing spare parts. And they didn't really do much with them, but I think they're just resting everybody to get ready for that final, or the West Final, on December 5th. It is going to be a hard thing to do. I mean, they have had the top-ranked offense. They have had the top-ranked defense. And it sounds like they're going to have everybody ready to go and healthy for that date. So Saskatchewan, Calgary, depends on who's coming in. But I think that the West Final we can win. And then again, I mean, it is definitely a real possibility for going back-to-back with the Grey Cup. I think that they've just got the team that's going to be there. Is there anything else we should worry about? Weather, temperatures?
Oh, of course, there's have to worry about weather if they're going to be playing on home fields. It's Winnipeg, right? So it could be frosty out there. But I think that the bigger topic is, like you mentioned, is the fire going to be there? I think it is. They've had a number of weeks off. They've had nothing really to play for the last little while. You sometimes wonder what's that, the balance, how much rest is required, right? You don't want too much to get lethargic. And that's what we're going to find out, right? That's what we'll have to see. That'll be the big barrier for the Bombers.
Yeah, that's going to be the biggest factor, and you're right. And I mean, last year they had that hunger. They went through the going into to Calgary, going into Saskatchewan to have to win games and go forward. So they had that. Now they've got that sort of rest with almost a month between games that are valuable, and we'll have to see from there. But that sort of covers the Bomber topic. Now let's get to GE. They bring good things to life, the whole 9 yards. What's going on with General Electric?
It's the end of an era here. I remember I was going through business school. You had the Jack Welch era, seen as this management guru almost. He started in the 80s. His tenure ended about 20 years later in the early 2000s. And GE was making everything from toasters to jet engines. And they had a GE Capital. They had their fingers in every single conceivable pot and somehow made it work. And now we're at the point where they're doing the opposite. And they're stripping off all the parts, selling them down. They're really paring down the company. Kind of the end of the GE era here, Kevin. What is your take?
Yeah, I mean, basically they came out and they said they're splitting into the 3 divisions. They're going to stick with their main area where they came to begin with in power. They're going into a healthcare area where they got rid of the capital a while ago. And then, of course, there's that aviation section. I mean, this reminds me sort of similar to 20 years ago when TransCanada Pipeline did the same thing. They had tons of different organizations and companies under there, and then figured that, let's go back to where our beginning was, strip it all down, and we'll see what value we can create for investors. So I think this is going to be a positive going forward. I think they had to do something different because their share price and everything else had not been doing much. I mean, they were recently into a 10-for-1 consolidation. That never seems to play well for companies going forward. But I think this is going to add a whole bunch to it, or going into the new millennials, as it were, or the next decade as we look at things. And it's going to be a positive, I think, for the company as we move forward.
Yeah, and companies go through that, right? You're around long enough, you're going to have different eras. You can't be the same company where 100 years ago or 20 years ago, and that's what GE is going through now. They're going through a big transition. What worked in 1990 is not working again today, so they've had to adapt. Well, we'll shift gears here, talk about Netflix, specifically Red Notice. Have you watched Red Notice?
No. I was actually going to watch it on the weekend, but something else came up, and I flipped through, and I don't know that Karen was involved for what, so whatever the case may be, we passed on Red Notice. It's going to be another weekend down the line, but I have heard good things about it. I've also heard interesting analyst takes on, or should I say, the sort of Siskel and Ebert thing on Rotten Tomatoes scenario. But why don't you give us a description? Because you have seen Red Notice.
I have. In the background here, it's got Dwayne Johnson as Ryan Reynolds, Gal Gadot. It's certainly star-studded. It's not a thinking movie. If you're looking to tune in for like a thought-provoking movie, this is not for you. But it's definitely fun, action-filled. The key here is Netflix paid $200 million, their largest investment ever in one film. And the rumor was they needed 70 million people to watch this thing just to break even. Now, Netflix has started to actually release some of that data. They were quite secretive before, but now they actually have a website, top10.netflix.com. I'll pull it up here. This is for last week, and it shows how many hours of streaming per film. And you can see right at the top there, Red Notice, 148 million, Kevin. That's how many hours this thing was streaming. It's about a 2-hour movie. So you're looking at like 75 million people that watched Red Notice just last week. So obviously the investment paid off. And if you look at the other parts of that top 10, almost exclusively, it's more original content from Netflix. So I think this just speaks volumes to their whole business model right there.
Yeah, and again, we're just dealing with movies on that side. I mean, if you went and sat there on the other side of the coin and did the TV series scenario, I'm sure you're going to have numbers there too that go on that point. But I mean, the last time I heard anything about somebody spending $200 million on a film, it was Titanic. And we saw how well that did. So, I mean, I guess if Netflix wants to follow that same thing, granted, I didn't see James Cameron's name invented on the directing side of this thing. But yeah, I think that's sort of leading to a lot of options that are going down the road. Will we see more of this coming out? By doing Netflix? Are they going to try and rob from that theater base, saying that, we can produce the same sort of quality in film. Why bother going to the theater when you can, just get it at home under your subscription package? And we're going to have the same sort of stars and star-studded scenarios going forward.
Yeah, I think that's clearly going to be the case, right? They had some major names here in this movie. It was not a major release across different theaters. It was solely to streaming, solely to their platform. They paid $200 million, and it seems they're getting their money back. They had hundreds of millions of people stream that movie in the first week. So obviously the business model going forward, they're not afraid of the big investments. But let's move on to the question of the week here, Kevin. Yes. And we get a lot of great questions. This one obviously applicable as people are thinking going down south, getting away for the winter. Common question, should I buy the US dollar now? Should we be exchanging our money right now?
Well, and that's always the biggest question, right? Should I do it now? Should I do it 6 months from now? Nobody ever seems to think of this as more of a dollar cost averaging thing, which probably is an even easier thing to do. Everybody wants to try and find the right time I mean, if it's 80 cents today, yeah, maybe I should buy. And then you find out a month later it's 84. Oh, I should have waited till then. Or it's down to 76. Gee, I wish I'd have bought when it was 80. I mean, theoretically, if you buy a little bit each month, you're going to get an average price that's probably pretty good. But if I have to do it in a sort of one lump sum scenario, buying the US dollar now probably is not a bad thing. I mean, beforehand, what we were looking at, now that you've got Fed Chairman Powell reelected to a second term, you could get more tapering coming around. That could lower the US dollar, comparatively speaking, which means that you could wait and buy it later. Or if he holds on to I'm going to use my tools and put everything down the road, raise interest rates later, you could get the Canadian dollar peeling off. I mean, there's a variety of different factors, but I don't think now is a bad time to buy. I think that there's a lot that we can wrap up to it. And this should be something that we consider going forward.
Yeah, again, one last point there. You always have to keep in mind cost exchange. Like if you just go to the credit union or the local bank, unless you have a really big sum, there's going to be a difference between the price you see on TV and the price you get when you actually do the exchange. Yes. And you have to keep those fees in mind. Sometimes we sweat over, oh, I should have got a penny more here, a penny more there. And we forget, well, if we would have done a lump sum, we could have minimized the cost. And sometimes that cost savings is better than the actual difference in the exchange had we had waited or gone early. So simply another factor to keep in mind. Dollar cost averaging makes sense, but you also have to minimize your overall cost because there can be a pretty big difference in the spread between what you see on TV and the actual rate you get when you go to the bank or the credit union. So all good things, all things to keep in mind. Anything you want to add, Kevin, before we let the folks go?
No, I think you covered that topic well, and I guess it depends. If you're not going to the U.S., then do you really need U.S. dollars? It's one of those scenarios. Another point to consider down the road. No, I think that's it for another episode of Back and Forth. We've covered off some things. Remember, Clint will buy the Constitution one of these days, maybe for less than 40 million, but we'll have to see how that plays out. Again, if you want to talk to us about this or anything else on these topics, financial, non-financial, please visit us at chatwithclintonandkevin.com. It's down below. We are more than happy to get back to you as fast as we can with some of the answers we've got. And if there's anything else that you want, please feel free to look at our website or contact us, or again, Facebook, YouTube, we're all there. That's it. I'm out. Final words to you.
I think you covered it. Everyone take care and stay safe.